So to create something out of nothing and make so much money from new age phenomena, of course, you mentioned about cricket is, I think, the only game in the world which has got so many formats. And that's where the appeal, from 5 day, 50 overs, 20, now they will have 10 as well.
Cricket has produced winners from 83 World Cup, then World Championship of Cricket, XYZ. You've seen us, we are always there in that 1, 2, 3 phase, not in the last 11 years, but otherwise, we've always been there. So, and I think that drives affinity. You want to be with the winning brands. You don't want to be identified with a sport where you're 170th in the world or 127th in the world.
Why is people identify with Dhoni? Why do people identify with Virat Kohli? They see something in them that connects you to them, and then this is the way the loyalty builds.
And I think that's been really a puzzle for me always. How a sport in a country, like how does America have basketball and baseball, but not soccer? Because they have, so I think every country. I also hear that cricket is not very big in Australia or New Zealand or even in the UK now.
He, being a guy from Ranchi, became a thala of Tamilians who have thought of. And similarly, if you see the other references, it shows that bigger than brand, how the regional references do not count.
Obviously, Rahul Dravid was dependable, Mr. Dependable, right? So all brands, many brands have used him for that, right? And Yuvraj has been, survivor, a great fighter, right? And so the brands tend to use that, wherever they want to convey the same thing. That.
So beyond the boundary is the topic. Lessons from cricket for business. I think, cricket, rightly said, is a religion in India. But more than that, let's look at the business part of it. There are two things I kind of am pretty intrigued with the way it's happened is, we all talk about scaling business and additional revenue streams. Cricket has shown both from India perspective. How they have done it is fascinating. There are lots of businesses we do where there are consumers are passionate, but how to ensure that they become so loyal and you're able to drive media revenue is a case study. I don't know if anyone wants to share their individual experiences in terms of business from cricket. Yeah.
One of the things I was looking at is, when you're managing a brand, you have multiple stakeholders, you have multiple KRAs, so to speak. One thing about cricket is pretty unique for each of the teams, and I'm more focused on the IPL part of it right now, is that you're a brand manager driving only one objective, which is top line growth, for example, which is you have to win. And all your resources are put behind that, which is a fairly unique situation as compared to business, where 1 year you might be focusing on the bottom line, so you might compromise a bit on growth. You don't have any such constraints here. So that's a pretty unique kind of differentiation, so to speak, with the brand business. But I think that brings a unique focus, and that is something that any business can learn. How do you focus on only going after growth, or how do you focus on only winning? Get all your inputs into that, build your team according to that, get the support structure oriented towards that growth objective. That's a pretty fascinating thought that went through my mind when I was thinking about these kind of parallels.
And IPL also brings in the fact that nothing is permanent, right? Because the performance could vary, the factors vary match after match, year after year actually, if you see the teams. And that's what business is all about, right? And I think that's what we need to accept, that nothing in business is permanent, right? Whether it's it's your brand standing or your human resource, your competitive advantage, none of that is permanent. So you have to keep reinventing yourself, keep making sure, keep benchmarking like they do in cricket, benchmarking with the other team members, with the other teams. So, I think all of that is so relevant. Also, I think one more factor about, since you mentioned about the IPL, is the fact that each team has its own strengths, right? These are all kind of region-specific teams with a region-specific fan following. And what you see as a manufacturer is that while you're competing at a national level, but it's actually the regional competition which becomes very tough because they have so much of a strong allegiance there. to break that allegiance, you need to do something very different to break into those regional brands. So I think these are some of the things that IPL evokes.
So, talking about regional alliances, I mean, nothing can be better learned from IPL itself and cricket. See, a small inference can be taken from a cricketer called Sanju Samson. He comes from Kerala. He represented Rajasthan Royals, and Malayalis were cheering for Sanju Samson, and hence were not cheering for the local team, but instead were cheering Rajasthan Royals more. Similarly, if you can see the inference of what happened at Chennai Super Kings, how bigger than life the cricketers become over the period of time. Yeah, so Dhoni, being a guy from Ranchi, became a thala of Tamilians who have thought of. And similarly, if you see the other references, it shows that bigger than brand, how the regional references do not count in longer version of the game.
So would you think an icon player, and it's like what Kohli is for Bangalore or for what Dhoni is for Chennai, does that drive loyalty towards that cricket team instead of, say, I may not be on Chennai, I may be a Mumbai resident, born and brought up, but still I may want to support Chennai whenever because of Dhoni. So my loyalty has shifted from from the place where I have been raised to influenced by an iconic player. So does that happen in business as well? You want to, a product is so good that I am just so hooked into it because of the iconic status attached to it.
See, I think all brands would always any brand would have a natural set of people who go towards the brand for various reasons, and every brand tries to extend itself. And you will have a toothpaste brand which wants to build a soap, and a soap brand which wants to make a powder, stuff like that, brand extension. So if you look at a team like a Chennai Super Kings, it has this natural affinity for Tamil Nadu and Chennai and all of that, and they built it. But to go beyond, they had to bring in somebody else. And I think that's something that brands have to learn from, that if you have to go beyond, then you have to bring something else which is not necessarily core. You have to bring some external affinities which help you build more adherence to your brand and bring in more consumers or whatever the franchise that you want to extend. And I think Virat Kohli with the RCB is a perfect example. I mean, it's a team which never wins. So by that sense, there should be no brand loyalty. It never wins. But because Kohli is there, it's got a set of adherents, and it's just, you watch it and you follow it because, it's Virat's team. So you need to have those things.
What iPhone is to the Apple ecosystem is what Dhoni is to Chennai Super Kings.
Yeah, so that's, and I think every company needs a star, and every company has a star brand. And it's because of that, more than the customer, your distribution supports you, right? Because you have one or two star products, all your other products, will fall in line, right? And then they get a push. Consumer's mind is different because they segment the products in their minds. So in each segment you might have a different star, but I think from the distribution point of view it's very important. Sorry, Indra, you're saying something?
No, fine. So my personal take is that cricket for many decades has been the most popular, the most loved, perhaps also the most played sport in India. It's been played in gullies and maidans. You just needed a bat which was a washing thing and a makeshift ball. And there were always icons. There were people like Gavaskar and Pataudi who always been icons, and people have loved them. But what has happened in the last 20 years, if you look at it from a business perspective, is that potential, the inertia of that potential has been converted into a very large business. And to my mind, that has happened for two or three things that all of you have spoken about. One is the democratization and the nationalization of the game. So it's not a North India game or an East India game. All of India is able to now participate in the game. I think the second thing that has happened is that cricket very smartly was the first sport in India, unlike football or hockey internationally, to adapt itself very well to television. So it became a massive television sport before football could become in India, like football is in the Premier League or in the Latin leagues. So that's something that these other sports missed. The third thing which I think one should give credit to the IPL, the people who started the IPL, is what you all spoke about, that it has created many, many regional heroes. So people like Dhoni, people from smaller districts, from smaller towns, they were able to come out and they were able to participate in cricket. And you don't really need to be an expert at playing cricket to be an expert in cricket. So every Indian can sort of participate and can engage with the game. So to my mind, what was very organic earlier, somebody said, hey, this can be a fabulous large business which you can channel through multiple new technologies. So now, to me, the latest example is what Reliance did with OTT. They've taken cricket from television to small screens. And the viewership, I think, has grown exponentially, right? That's again very smart from a business perspective. And I see a lot of that happening in cricket, but not in other sports. So to me, these are some of the lessons that I take away from what you all have also spoken about in terms of how cricket has,
I think one taking off away, the whole creating different formats of the game has really driven the popularity. I mean, I don't think if cricket had remained only a 5-day test, that would have achieved the kind of popularity that it has today. So for any brand, you'll have to have different formats as well. Extensions, you'll have different format. Even the same brand, from a sachet to a 5-liter jar or whatever. That's how you consume. So that's how the brand cricket has grown, because you made it so accessible for the common man. Otherwise, it was a specialist game. 5 days, guy will keep coming and doing something.
Yeah, I think another factor is, the engagement. It's become an entertainment more than just a game. Correct. It's become a, few hours. It's like an entertainment for everyone who's on ground and off ground, right? So, you have these cheer girls and everything else happening on the ground, which is actually from business point of view also is very, very important, because, especially businesses that I come from, of course, the ultimate consumer sometimes may not be a part of the decision making. There's an influencer in between. Could be an electrician, could be a contractor, could be an architect, interior designer. Now, if these people are not engaged, right, your brand doesn't necessarily have to do well. And today, for me to connect or keep the consumer engaged is a very expensive proposition, right? I don't have that kind of a money which perhaps a FMCG brand would have. So how do I use my money to keep these people engaged, the influencers engaged, so that they keep, talking about my brand. Yeah. So, and I think influencers play a role in actually every product category. It could be a different kind of an influencer, but they play a role in. So I think that's another learning.
Something interesting earlier about attention. If you could talk more about that.
Yeah. So what I'm told is that we're living in an attention economy. Okay. Everybody wants attention of your consumers. And that attention span is decreasing, massively. From a 30-second reel to now a 6-second, hookup line. Okay, so what's happening here is that as long as you're able to identify with that person within the first few seconds, why is people identify with Dhoni? Why do people identify with Virat Kohli? They see something in them that connects you to them, and then this is the way the loyalty builds towards Dhoni. And my struggle is that what would be Chennai Super Kings without Dhoni? Okay, what would be Bangalore, RCB without Virat Kohli, or Rohit Sharma, Mumbai Indians without Rohit Sharma? And this is where the business side comes important. If suddenly, say, Apple decides to kill its most important product, say iPhone, will it still survive? And what are the different innovations it can look into? So cricket went through the innovation of Test cricket to one day to 2020, and now even 10-10. So from a business point of view, in your natural life cycle of your star product, the moment it goes down the curve, what can business do? And this is where you talked about Sanju Samson, rising another competing product, which is basically taking Rajasthan Royal again as it's a new identity. So
yeah, so I think that is where the brand extensions become important, because if you are able to create multiple categories, right? So you're ensured of a place, right? So that if one category starts doing bad, you have a hook in the market with the other category, right? So it is like saying that, okay, if there was no Lux today, will Unilever still survive? The answer is yes, because they have many other hooks, right? So I think it's maybe something akin to that.
But it's a very interesting point because as a brand, you have to, or as a portfolio, as a company, you have to prepare this. We've seen, I mean, if you remember when Dhoni stepped down as captain and Jadeja came in as captain, I don't think CSK was prepared for that, at that change. And so, and they didn't put their heart behind that change. So it faltered. Jadeja faltered, his performance dropped, team engagement dropped, and then they took him back, and then Dhoni came back. Now, as a brand, I doubt you will have that luxury of doing all these things. So if you are changing, then you need to put your heart and soul behind that change and drive it with everything. And I think today, Mumbai Indians is trying that change with Hardik coming back and Rohit stepping off. I assume that they will put their heart and soul behind making Hardik successful so that the brand doesn't suffer. And as portfolios come in, you have to put your heart and soul behind it.
So there's a word which I had earlier heard called creative destruction. So that every company, every product has to go through the cycle of creative destruction, and it's a difficult thing to do. You don't just destroy your cash cow. Your primary breadwinner. So with Dhoni defines what Chennai Super Kings, and that drives their revenue in terms of ticket sales, merchandise sales, advertising sales. You just can't differentiate or eliminate Dhoni from. Imagine a situation which is Chennai Super Kings minus Dhoni. Will their fan following go down, or what? I think a lot of companies, they do try to diversify. What Microsoft was known through its Windows, and now they diversified into a lot of other things. But that icon always, that product still remains.
So yeah, Microsoft, since you've taken the example, I mean, they did go through a creative destruction, right? When Nadella decided that we will go cloud, we'll stop physical form of software selling. Yeah, that was a destruction, right? But it worked. But when Coke tried playing with its packaging and flavor, it didn't work. But then they were quick to withdraw it. So yeah, as long as you understand that it's not working and you're bold enough to withdraw it, right? Writing off the losses, I think that's fine.
So what really struck me most when I was thinking of this topic was the fact that we talk about going digital, new media, new age media. Cricket has actually managed to, the majority income, they have come to this because of the media rights. They are, and that was media rights of something which did not exist. IPL is just something out of nothing in that sense.
10,000 crores.
Yeah, it's now 10,000 crores or whatever. So to create something out of nothing and make so much money from new age phenomena. Of course, you mentioned about cricket is, I think, the only game in the world which has got so many formats. And that's where the appeal, from 5 day, 50 overs, 20, now they will have 10 as well. Then we're going to have gully cricket also, that is starting now. So that, those kind of extensions are, very interesting. But one thing which also struck me is that, there are people who build the railroads and there are people who build services on top of that and make more money. For a time I thought that all these cricket apps will make more money than that. Of course, because of GST they have now been waylaid. But at one point they were making serious money. And the railroad was, done by someone else. But these guys were riding on top and making more. So there are a lot of these lessons you learn that, you need not be the infrastructure layer. You can be something on top and yet make some serious money.
So one of the interesting things I was thinking of when you look at, the brand and cricket as a team, each team is creating certain things that define the identity. So Chennai has that yellow color and that whistle powder. Mumbai has got a blue and Mumbai Meri Jaan. So all brands also have to do that. You have to create things that are very easy for the customer to identify you with, build an affinity with. So these are iconic properties. So maybe even if people move, but the properties remain, the brands will continue to, I was just thinking about your question, what will happen to Chennai without Dhoni? Maybe these properties which are intrinsic to the brand stay there. The brand will continue to build on that and, it's got something to do. It's got something to work with at least.
But from a corporate scenario, do you think how much time how would you define a brand building process? Typically, how many years would you build a brand? It's a very indefinite timeline, right?
There's no particular timeline for that. Brands get built overnight nowadays.
Actually, a lot of factors, right? I mean, it depends on your product. It obviously depends on the distribution, how much they have actually supported you. So it's not necessarily about spending huge monies on advertisement and building up a brand quickly. I've seen cases in my career where you manage to create a 300 crore brand within less than 5 years, right? Just because the product was great, the channel believed in it, and they made they got that belief transferred onto the electricians, and it picked up like fire.
So again, going back to the point that you made, and perhaps on yours as well, nowadays there's a lot of comparison between how long it has taken Netflix to get its first 300 million users compared to, let's say, Google or someone else, right? A Google or companies that came before. So I think brands, in terms of users, how many people have affinity for you, and they show that affinity by paying for your service or your product. So I think, like you said, people who are building brands on top of the railroad, they are perhaps building the brands faster. Because in the digital age, user familiarity with the product and the service, affinity to the brand, the power of influencers to drive all this, right? And one of the, to me, the best things about this is that now scale and spend is not so important to build a brand. If you are a small local or even a hyper-local brand that is providing a relevant service, a relevant product, and you're riding on the existing infrastructure, you can build a brand very quickly in a local area. To me, that again from cricket, if you talked about gully cricket and different formats.
What surprises me with cricket is that, as you mentioned, that brand has the longest longevity in the sports, economy of India. So no other sport has ever been able to come close to cricket as a religion or as a brand. We have tried with football, kabaddi. There have been iconic sportsmen from which have been rewarded. Prakash Padukone se badminton, and again recently Saina Nehwal, and say from PT Usha, I remember Sunil Chetri and all that. But somewhere no other sport has enjoyed the brand of what cricket has happened in the last 50 years.
I think that's such an important point, because personally to me, I see perhaps a lot of Indians who play badminton, who play football, very popular sports, but they have not been able to ride the media waves as cricket has. So to me, the success of cricket really has been to exploit what was there in terms of television. So why has football become so popular in Europe, and now in America it is becoming, right? Why is basketball so big in the US? So basketball was dying till the NBA got in Michael Jordan, who was in turn sponsored by Nike, right? And that fueled the entire basketball phenomena. And now there are multiple icons who come. So I think this issue of if Michael Jordan retires, who's going to be the next Michael Jordan, was answered, because there are others who came and took his place, because they were hungry for it. And I see the same thing happening in India. So I think the difference has been, how do you use the media? How do you use the existing or the next technology? And what is your next idea? I think that is what a business also needs to make very relevant. So I see a lot of companies, and I'm sure all the companies here, right, are saying, how do we go digital? How do I make sure I don't miss out? It may be a small proportion of the business at this point in time. It may be only 4% of my sales, right? But how do you make sure you're there, right? What's next?
So if I may just take up on your point about why cricket is so successful and why has it grabbed attention. One is, of course, accessibility, media, all of that. But it's also because cricket has been successful and is a sport where we have, as Indians, performed very well as compared to, say, football or hockey. Right? So that's why people identify it. So brands which are winners in any category that you take, you'll have your top 3 brands which have maybe 60% of the market, and then there'll be 30 brands fighting for the balance part of it. Right. So cricket has produced winners from '83 World Cup, then World Championship of Cricket, XYZ, you've seen us, we are always there in that 1, 2, 3 phase, not in the last 11 years, but otherwise, we've always been there. So, and I think that drives affinity. You want to be with the winning brands. You don't want to be identified with the sport where you're 170th in the world or 127th in the world. So, I think that's a very important thing for brands. You got to be in that 1, 2, 3 category if you have to retain affinity and continue to grow and win.
So one thing which Nirad mentioned, I really like that, the delivery of cricket has really moved to small screens. From stadium, I remember, we used to queue for tickets, in the stadiums to, and stay there for 9 hours in the sun just to see a test match. And now, now it's been in the lap of your lap in terms of in small screen mobile. You can see people, seeing cricket while they're traveling in local trains, while they're sitting in restaurants and things like that. So I think that engagement and that the euphoria which was built as part of the delivery mechanism, I think that is something that's very important.
So using this word delivery, I'll tell you how the expectations are changing, right? So our products typically, when a building is getting constructed, right? In the past, you would you will basically dump all the material that they want, whether it's wires and switches and lighting. You'll just dump it at one shot. And then came a stage where the builder said, no, you start delivering it, to me wing-wise, right? As I finish one wing, then they came on to the floor-wise. Now they're saying that every floor when we complete, we will let you know the schedule and you deliver it there. Now believe it, the expectation now is that every flat, we're supposed to create a separate package and then deliver it for each flat marked with the flat number, right? So the consumer expectation, obviously, it's increasing, and they expect the delivery as per their convenience,
Yeah, so I think this whole reinvention of business model and the driving the engagement, I think cricket has a solid business case around it. How cricket has done it. So from 5-day to big bash 10-10, and how corporates can move from their iconic products to building that whole ecosystem. Right? Cricket is a huge business, not just the cricket. As you mentioned, the ancillary services around cricket.
So do you think, to the question that you asked on what next for cricket?
So before that, so for example, they are now going to America so 9th June is the India-Pakistan match in New York. It's already sold out.
So it's a new market.
New market. So what next?
Make in India kind of.
So what next?
No, see, you saying in terms of what next, do you think, since you manage or you have funding in such a large portfolio of companies, that things like the metaverse, which haven't really taken off in other areas, but do you think it will help consumers to participate more in cricket? For example, there's Smash here, right? Where you can go and play cricket, and it's great fun. I've gone with Deepak and played there. So do you think technologies like that will reinvent cricket further?
It will. Immersive technologies will happen. You should be able to bowl to Sachin Tendulkar. Almost feel like you're there. Or you should be able to, Dhoni will keep stumps when you're batting. And you look behind, hi Dhoni, and he'll respond. So those will happen. But it's early, but this will certainly happen. I think in the meantime, there's things like new geographies are still there. So from 10,000 crores, how can it become 30,000 crores?
So I think that's a very important point. What next is it's like doing a portfolio review. What do you do with your brand now? And you have one laggard, which is like Test cricket. People are kind of being forced to play the game, and you can see games which are supposed to last 5 days, getting over in 1.5 days and 2 days. There's no real interest. Stadiums are empty. So as a portfolio, then should the ICC kind of guys decide that this is a dead investment, we should take the money out of this and put it into growing America, put it into growing China as the next frontier for the brand, and go in with a T20 or T10 or whatever it is. So I think that's when you look at your brand and your portfolio, you have to slice out some of the things as you go along, so that the whole company stays alive and not investing behind probably a dead duck.
I would reckon Test cricket as a revenue would probably be...
But negative possibly. Negative, must be negative.
From a revenue, pure top line perspective, would probably be in single digit. I don't know. I'm just taking a guess. He's a data science guy, but...
Which other brands other than cricket you recall, which has such strong customer loyalty?
not in India, but as
From a
Indrajit mentioned
sports
about
perspective, or
No, from a general, huh? Apple's there.
Die-hard
look at the
loyalists.
market cap of Apple. Very strong loyalty. I mean, there's no new product really for last 6-7 years. Still, every year, it's market cap is huge.
sports brand loyalties, what extent it can go to, right? It can create riots and burn cars, right? So that's brand loyalty. Football clubs and football.
Soccer is quite.
So I remember my dad was a big fan of the Bajaj scooter, but the Bajaj Chetak, and scooter meant, a two-wheeler meant Bajaj at that point of time, and there was this quite a long, and similarly, an ambassador car. So
I think if you look at corporate brands, but if you look at otherwise, I think Bollywood is such a strong brand, which is comparable perhaps to cricket. So it has its own icons, right, and very democratized now as well. So if you again see how Bollywood has reinvented itself, 2 years back people were writing it off. Suddenly now there are 1,000 crore movies again. They've also gone massively to OTT. All the big stars now don't mind. Shah Rukh has released his daughter's film on OTT, right? So they have again, like you said, the consumption format has changed, the technology has changed, the audience has changed. So I think a lot of that between Bollywood and cricket in India, where there is passive consumption, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to go and play, right? You can just sit there, you can watch something on a screen and be entertained. I think that in India creates a lot of pickup from customers somehow.
A brand need to be a really good brand to be successful, or just say decent brand ambassador does the work for that? What do you think?
Ultimately, the brand has to perform, whether it's in your home or in the trade or wherever it is. It has to perform.
contrary to the point,
I think it's the best example of one of the best brands of India. Because when I started working, Onida used to be a case study in marketing and building a brand. Onida.
Onida.
So the whole thing of your neighbors envying the TV you have, that positioning line. So I think you have to build great brands. It's not organic. It's not something in life that, okay, everyone loves yoga, so you can make a brand out of yoga. That's a different game. Everyone loves cricket, so cricket has its icon. If a corporate is building a brand, I think the investment in communication, in advertising, in hiring the best icons for your brand. So Onida, for example, didn't have a Shah Rukh, but they had the devil. And that to me is the ultimate in creativity, right?
yeah, but to his point, so Royal Challengers Bangalore, if you say, coming back to the cricket, so they have not won a single IPL title, but they have an icon, Virat Kohli.
Correct.
Okay, so will RC in terms of, so how does that tie up? And he says the brands without, do you really need a brand ambassador?
Just coming back to cricket, we all remember Pune Super Giants, right? And it played only one season or two, if I remember correctly. And when Saurav Ganguly was not picked for KKR, Bengalis hated it the most. And when Pune picked up Saurav Ganguly, there was an article in the newspaper, I remember, a very famous newspaper. It said KKR versus Kolkata. It's strange that a brand ambassador could change the brand so much in spite of that brand not being that good, right? There have been several inferences of some technology companies which have been the brand ambassadors have been our cricketers, the famous cricketers. They will run for 2 to 3 years, but the hype would be only because of the brand ambassador being larger than life. So that was my.
I think it's important because yes, a brand ambassador gets you recognition. It will get you there. It will get you into the consideration set, so to speak. But ultimately, you will have to perform for the brand to live for years. Otherwise,
Brand promise has to be kept. See, today a brand icon also selects the brand in largely with an assumption that the brand matches his own image or profile, right? So let's say Amitabh Bachchan, if he's if he's advertising for a particular brand, he believes that the brand stands up to his stature or his iconic image. But if the brand product actually doesn't perform, doesn't deliver its promise, it's not going to work, irrespective.
But do you think as Indians we are very obsessed with the brand ambassador than the product?
Absolutely, yeah. Why just Indians? I think it's a global phenomenon.
Because I remember, so Vodafone created this Zuzus, right? Amazing campaign. The devil, in terms of, they didn't had, iconic celebrities endorsing it. But then they created their own space in it.
If I see the work Amitabh Bachchan is doing now, I think some of his endorsements are downright silly. But he just gets it because of his brand power. If I look at all the chewing tobacco ads that these guys are doing, now I think they lose a certain amount of credibility, but also perhaps to the relevant target audience, it's a huge thing that Shah Rukh and Ajay Devgan and Akshay Kumar are endorsing a chewing tobacco brand. So people who chew tobacco, it's a big deal. So I think very often we are not able to put ourselves in the shoes of the actual consumer. We think from our perspective.
But this is something I've not been able to demystify, that just because a celebrity is endorsing a product, should I buy it? I have not been able to convince myself.
I think it depends on the seriousness and the involvement of the consumer in the brand. So if you're buying electrical cables and Shah Rukh Khan is endorsing it, I think it'll only take you so far, right?
Yeah, so that's why we chose Akshay Kumar, right? Because we believe that Akshay Kumar has some credibility. I mean, he supports social causes, right? That's what he portrays. So we chose him. Now, perhaps it worked.
It gets you attention at least, right? You break through the clutter of everybody else doing product-based advertising. Yeah.
So coming back to cricket, I think cricket is probably the only brand where from age 7 to 70 or 80 also is loyalty is there. The interesting question is, are brand ambassadors relevant outside of cricket? In cricket they are relevant because it's across. For the younger generation, for age 14 to let's say 22, 25, they are more, kind of driven by communities, influencers, and cricket has, straddled across everything. So cricket is an exception because it manages across. So let's say Virat Kohli is popular with a 8-year-old as well as 80-year-old, but may not be the same if you are, having him endorse a product.
Yeah, so that's a different ball game. According to me, this age group has no brand loyalty.
Except in cricket.
No, maybe in cricket also it will be short-lived. It's purely performance, performance driven. So
That was my actual question. In fact, does that brand ambassador drives this, the brand royalty of this age group?
In this age group, no. What you call as millennials, I don't think there's a brand loyalty of any sorts. And that's my take.
Sure. So do you think the age of brand ambassadors will go away in the next decade?
No, I don't think so. I think brand ambassador is important to get attention for your brand. After that, your brand has to work. It has to deliver.
No, but the rise of the micro influencers.
The influencer is a brand ambassador. He is the ambassador. It doesn't have to be a film star. The brand ambassador will depend upon your target audience, whom you want to talk to, and that who's relevant to that audience.
So the identity of brand ambassador has now changed from a celebrity to a local influencer.
Could be, depending upon the category, depending on your age of your or target audience, whom you're speaking to, it will change. Virat may not be the right guy to talk to.
Maybe Ananya Birla would be a brand icon who would be more influencing.
So it will change.
I have a slightly different point of view because I think based on some of the information that our marketing and consumer insight teams keep sharing with us through webinars and stuff, that both cricketers as well as celebrities, whether from the modeling world or the film world, are extremely popular and can influence brand choice as far as the younger generation is concerned. In fact, the younger generation is happier to follow what a brand ambassador or influencer says than find out for themselves. So this is really the area, like you said, of a very short attention span. And if you say, hey, I'm using this makeup or I'm using this bag or this is my outfit of the day, if Anushka Sharma says that, you will increase the sales of a clothing brand by her saying this is my outfit of the day.
I'll take the inference to a different perspective. Maybe I'll take it to academics a little bit. So IIM Lucknow is known to have been producing the best of the MDP programs for corporates. okay, and especially in marketing area. So there is a professor called Professor Kumra. Especially company would ask for whether Professor Kumra is teaching this course or not. So there is a saying, as in brand ambassadors have a cult following. This professor has a cult following. They say, जो क्रिकेट में बूमरा है वो मार्केटिंग में कुमरा है. And similarly, there is a professor in IIM Kozhikode, and his name is Professor A.F. Matthew. If you go to Google and type who is the best management professor of all times, you would find his name amongst the top 3 professors listed in that group. And you would find in Quora, somebody would write about him, say 20 years back he taught him something in the classroom, he remembers that thing still, and he has written that over there. So cult following is everywhere, I would say.
So this is very interesting, because I heard someone telling me that in India, the universities and the academic institutions have always been known by the students. That so and so passed from this institute. And in the Western world, the universities have always been defined by the name of the faculty. Okay, that so and so teaches there. So I want to study in ABC because so and so teaches there. Okay, so that has always been the difference. And if this now is moving, to India, I think that's a wonderful thing.
An example of that is, I have seen students denying admissions in Bangalore and Calcutta, not Ahmedabad for sure, denying admissions in Bangalore and Calcutta for Kozhikode just because the current director, that is Debashish Chatterjee, is there and he teaches the management leadership courses. They would just want to go to that institute so that he has a better connect with the professor. He is a professor as well as the director of the institute. And he has an amazing following. If you go to any of his LinkedIn posts, you would see in minutes he would have thousands of comments in his posts. And that is, yeah.
But do you think is it dangerous? Like, our attention span is decreasing. Our ability to get influenced is, going exponentially high in a very short point of time. And aren't we like, these, you use the word cult, so if I am as a person getting influenced very quickly without applying my own brain, and if somebody just because I don't want to buy an insurance policy just because Amitabh Bachchan is selling an insurance policy. I want to do the finance behind it.
I don't think we have to worry so much, because what he's talking about, to my mind, is an area where you're highly involved. So while you talk about a professor, let's talk about a brand, let's say like BCG or McKinsey. So yesterday there's an article by McKinsey, right? So because it was by McKinsey and the subject is interesting to me, I will read it. But of course I will use my own judgment to see whether it is useful, does it make sense or not, right? So to me, for our kind of people, those are the cult brands, as it were. They have built it over a period of time. The reputation is not easily earned. True. Right? I would, and I'm sorry to say this, no offense, I would not read an article by somebody from Deloitte. But I would spend time reading an article from BCG. That's me. I'm saying that's me. For you, it might be different, right? So I think in every area where the consumer involvement is very high, you tend to say, okay, this is a great brand, I'll check it out for myself. But if I had to buy a cup of coffee, to me, the 1000 cafes in Bombay are fungible. Whether I have a cappuccino from one or the other, it doesn't matter to me, right? So there...
But you have to go and buy cafe in a supermarket.
But there, if Shah Rukh says, hey, go to Starbucks, I think it makes a small incremental difference to certain people.
But if you have to go and buy a coffee in the supermarket for your home consumption, which one would you buy?
I would, so again, that's an involved process because I'm a coffee lover. It's not a simple answer.
But for me, for quite a period of time, it was Nescafe. You don't have to just look beyond Nescafe. Although there was brew and there was...
That's also driven by the choices which are now available in terms of coffee. That's a point. Yeah, there was no choice. You had one coffee, you went for it. Everybody, all of us probably had that one coffee at home. If you're a South Indian, maybe you had brew.
So I had worked in advertising for a part of my career, and at that time there used to be something called how many impressions have you made to the consumer, which means how many times have you seen my ad. So if you've seen my ad 100 times, there's a good chance that you'll go buy the product, whether the ad is good or not, whether the celebrity is relevant or not, whether I've done a good job of... So it's just number of impressions. Now I think people are more discerning. They even choose their influencers carefully. Which influencer do I follow? Do I buy what they recommend or not? So I think that consumers are savvier now with more information available.
So I'm kind of split between, the sustainability of these iconic celebrity brand ambassadors versus the influencers, and
Change, a new crop will come. I think already in cricket it's been proven that the Hardiks and the others of the world are taking over from the. So it's a slow process, but it'll happen. That's happening in Premier League, that's happening in basketball. So globally, I think brand ambassadors.
Yeah, so the emergence of different kind of influencers is clearly there, right? I mean, it's no longer only movie stars and sports stars, right? It could be anyone who's got a great blog.
Harsha Bhogle is a great example. Exactly. Na khelta hai, but he just gives expert comments. So Harsha Bhogle is an influencer. He teaches management lessons now.
He started advertising as well.
Yeah, from Ahmedabad.
He's the only Ahmedabadian who has gone and
He
worked
and
as
his wife both are MBAs, and he's given up his career.
Sir, who rode the wave early.
It's an amazing story.
so what advice would you give to people watching this podcast in terms of how to build their brand in this new digital age?
I hope a lot of people are watching this.
And lessons from cricket. It has to connect to cricket.
Lessons from cricket, about how cricket has been able to, sustainably build and reinvent its own brand over multiple icons over a period of time.
Cricket has been a bit ahead of the curve. Like he said, there was the World Cup win. Then it adapted to television very well. Then, like we mentioned, it changed the consuming formats. It went from 5 days to 50 overs, 40 overs, 20 overs. It's adopted digital way ahead of the curve. I think better than corporates have. Right? It's been faster than Amazon or faster than Flipkart. Cricket has gone digital. And now it is already planning the next. I think they have done ancillary revenue like merchandising and so many other things so well.
Betting apps.
I think it's so some of these things are amazing things for corporates to learn.
Yeah, and a constant engagement.
Constant engagement, yeah. Yeah, the calendar is full through the year. You don't have a day without
Some cricket or the other happening, yeah.
Yes.
So cult leadership is there in cricket also. All you go to Bombay, even stadium now. Even now there will be Sachin. He may or may not be there. But the moment he walks in the stadium, people go crazy. So those cults are
Just
still there.
one of the things that teams are doing well is, like you mentioned, Sachin. Like you also talked about RCB and what happens if Virat goes. I think what Mumbai Indians done as a brand is that they've held on to Sachin. He's a mentor today. He may not play, but he's a mentor. So the affinity remains with the brand. Virat Kohli will become a mentor for RCB. He stays with the brand. So brands can't afford to let go of the good properties. You will find ways of retaining it. So brands will retain the color, they'll do things which they won't mess with and hold on to it. So
No, but see, Sachin and Dhoni, they have a very, as I said, people associate with them with a very positive, affirming personality. They are, you don't, unlike a Virat Kohli who is a little aggressive, can come across. You can love him, but hate him, you cannot ignore him. But with Sachin and Dhoni, there's always a positive affinity towards them.
So I still think Virat is a huge.
No, it's an icon, but
like Saurabh actually started this thing of saying I'm an Indian but I'm going to be aggressive. I'm not going to let the Goras dominate the narrative. So he built his own narrative. I think Virat learned from that and said I'm also going to build my own narrative. So if you do that, you create your brand. Dhoni built his own narrative, which was slightly.
I think everyone has, See, obviously Rahul Dravid was dependable, Mr. Dependable, right? So all brands, many brands have used him for that, right? And Yuvraj has been, survivor, a great fighter, right? And so brands tend to use that, wherever they want to convey the same thing. So
I think if you have a personality, you're more likely to have a better brand.
Yes.
Yeah, if you have a personality.
So basically, corporates need to have define their own personality and stick to it. That's how they would
That's the
attract
whole
the
idea of a
customers.
brand, yeah.
How much can it expand, you think? Now they've gone to America. What next?
I think they're just touching the frontiers of America.
XLRI,
America, they will break all boundaries. I mean, the kind of success European leagues have, football has,
But if you
I think
see
cricket will have.
football for the last 60, 70 years has been trying to crack America. And still it's probably the number 5th or 6th game. And probably more with the women than the men's team is nowhere. Women's team. So
Yeah, I
It
think
is
likewise.
a huge struggle.
Yeah, perhaps even baseball hasn't been able to come into Europe so much, right?
No.
Yeah.
But is it something to do with not invented here syndrome? Like cricket was, played in India since ages. The Britishers came and introduced it. Sichai, so
We think chai is us,
So-
right?
so
We invented chai. We
does it
didn't.
not
but we think we
invented
did.
here or not, not indigenous to that is a fact. Like, is Coca-Cola really,
See, I think
good across
if
the
you
globe?
take hockey, we've always performed brilliantly in hockey. We were world champions for a very long time, by far. But unfortunately, and I'm sorry, it did not become a television sport to the extent that. So unless you get the funding, which, if I see the largest media companies in the world today, Facebook, Google, they all survive because of advertising money. And unless you find a way to bring that in, which these sports didn't find a way. Now, how that X factor happened where cricket became popular, while we had greats, so while you had a Gavaskar, you had a Dhanraj Pillai, and you had others in hockey as well. But it didn't happen for them on media, and they did not get the advertising support. And I think that's been really a puzzle for me always. How a sport in a country, like how does America have basketball and baseball, but not soccer because they have, so I think every country. I also hear that cricket is not very big in Australia or New Zealand or even in the UK now. Very few people
Probably
actually.
number 3rd or number 4th.
Yeah.
game.
So is the format of cricket, because after every over there's a break, so you can put an ad, unlike any other sport. Because that format is more amenable to advertising. So hockey has got 15 minutes, it's got 4 breaks. So you
Question
can't take
I'm
a
really
break in
asking is
between.
that cricket as a sport is not really big in the UK or in Australia, right? The format is the same. But why is the subcontinent, like you said, embrace it so much? Now that is a puzzle, right?
I think
Why not football? Why
this
not
is
hockey?
a bit like, every brand and everything has to have a timing.
Right.
So as hockey and football were kind of deteriorating, cricket won in 1983, and that gave a. So it's also brands also have to get their timing right.
Also, the size of the market, the returns on your investments are great here. Maybe that's not so true in the developed world. Maybe that's.
So has it peaked now, you think, cricket from a business perspective, or is this the top, or is still another peak to come?
I think there's a huge upside still there. Yeah. Because if you just look at the strength of our currency and our, upside for corporates to grow, cricket is a prime property.
So I'm sorry. I take an example very often, even with the investors. Havels, before cricket and after cricket, it's a different story. It was an industrial brand unknown to most people in India, except people in North, maybe to some extent. They spent 3 years continuously, about 400 odd crores, 450 crores, and look at where it is. Where today it's got a market cap, of about what maybe more than that. Yeah, 30,000 crores.
How much does it have, market cap? How much is it, market cap?
More than 30,000 crores. So they created a consumer brand from an industrial unknown brand. Over 3 years, by investing in cricket, they created a consumer brand. Products are not great, but preferred.
No, I think number one is, give what the consumer wants. Consumer wants different segments of consumer want different consumption of cricket, from 5 days to 20 overs, now it will be 10 overs. So they have understood what consumer wants. And of course, more importantly is new age media they have been able to capture. These are two things, there are plenty, but these are, I don't want to give a laundry list.
So cricket has always evolved. What's next? What's next? We always ask this question. So if I remember correctly, IPL started in 2008 and it's still going strong. What's next for cricket to evolve? It's always, there always been talks about test cricket being in 4 days, maybe giving more relief to bowlers to have more bowler friendly pitches instead of having more batsman friendly pitches. Then cricket being faster, maybe they are already planning to have a T10 league in India. So cricket has always evolved and it will evolve in the future as well.
To that point, what amazes me and the lessons which I take back is that cricket has really been able to sustain over generations. From our grandfathers to fathers to our children and perhaps their children. This is one sport or one business of sport which A has continuously innovated, and hence it is still so relevant. And even though iconic players and brand ambassadors have changed, the affiliation towards that particular brand or that particular ecosystem still continues. I think what companies, so cricket to me in India is built to last. It's built to scale. And from a company's point of view, we talk about, very high valuations in a very short span of time. We look at, as we say, creative destruction. We talk about, quick mergers and acquisitions. In the startup world, it's over how quickly you can make more and exit. And here I think this is an example where you've just sustained and built it over generations, and iconic companies like in India, the Tata houses, and say Reliance and the Birlas, they have sustained those businesses and built that brands over generations. And I think that's where I think the analogy is that it's not a quick game. It's not how fast you can go, it's how far you can go.
Right. For me, I'll move from cricket to actually some of the teams, and and more to the IPL, where you have a CSK, you have a Mumbai Indians. They have really created huge fan followings, unlike some of the other teams which struggle a bit. And you look at what they're doing very well. They have a consistent set of players. So there's a consistent set of attributes. So the players won't change so frequently. So it's easy to identify them with the brand. I know Dhoni is there with CSK. So that helps a lot, that consistency. Brands can't change their personalities and hope to retain loyalties. So you have to be consistent. You also have to be a performer. These teams win. And that's why you continue to have this. These teams expand, they spend a lot of money in creating the infrastructure to help the brand grow. It's not just about, we've recruited 3 cricketers and we'll win. They create the whole environment in which the brand will succeed, be it in the back-end production to quality to XYZ. You'll have to create that. So I think these are some things that some of these real solid brands have done, creating the whole ecosystem to help the brand
so
succeed.
They have built this value system. As I rightly said, Dhoni, Jadeja, Suresh Raina, they have been the face of CSK. Or you don't see them in any other team every second year. So that has able to create that stickiness to that brand. I asked my son. My son watches English Premier League, and I said, who do you support? He said Liverpool. I said, why? You have never been to Liverpool. Okay, you have never seen them play on their stadium, and he knows everything about Liverpool. And he researched, and he knows which were the iconic players and which are in the past and now, and that. So Liverpool, in that sense, just like Mumbai Indians and Chennai Super Kings have created that whole aura and value system where you naturally gravitate towards them. So I think companies and corporates, as long as they built, I remember, to that point, in my, very younger days, there was a joke in Bangalore: if the groom works in Infosys, it's very easy to get married. That was the whole aura of Infosys. Working if you're in the Bangalore region. I don't know if that true anymore or not. There are many more companies. So I think that over these periods, whether it's in sports or in the corporates, I think the more you do the same thing again and again. Brands are not built by doing different things, to your point. It's doing the same thing, just better and bigger every time. So I think that is something which has worked well.
This connection also, I'll take back the conversation to the previous conversation we had. Talking about Liverpool, is it because Steven Gerrard has been there as a brand ambassador, or a Michael Owen has been a brand ambassador who has been like bigger than life, who have driven Liverpool to although they have not been that successful, but the brand factor has been built by these bigger than life brand ambassadors.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, that definitely is one of the main reasons that I think fans follow the icons that they like. and they follow them from team to team very often. They don't.
So which IPL team do you support, if I may ask?
I used to support Mumbai Indians just because Sachin was there. And once Sachin stopped playing, I started supporting, of course, Chennai Super Kings because of the Dhoni's affiliation.
And if Dhoni stops playing, who would you support?
As I said, cricket has always evolved, and fan base has also evolved in the same perspective. So, with the captaincy change and everything at Mumbai Indians, more of Indians, whether they relate themselves to Mumbai Indians or not, because of the success the Indian team had in the World Cup, in spite of not winning the cup, the way Rohit Sharma played, fearless cricket without any score in mind of personal gratification or anything like that, people will support. I would personally support Mumbai Indians now because of Rohit Sharma.
So I personally believe that if I was to draw a parallel between cricket and corporate India, to me what has happened is that what the BCCI has done for cricket and what has happened to corporate India is that digital infrastructure has transformed, and it's helped take cricket and corporate India products and aspirations of the consumer deep into India where they weren't before. So whether it is smaller towns, rural India and so on. So both cricket as well as brands are going digitally into these markets. What now needs to follow, and the BCCI is doing a great job of it, building cricket infrastructure in smaller towns. Similarly, corporate India, I think, whether it's a Maruti or whether it's the Tata trucks or whether it's Tata consumer products or the products of your companies, are also now, I think, able to get more markets even within India as a very large market. So to me, that's a great mix of digital and physical that is a parallel between the two.
So, I think I have three simple points. One is, I think, the leadership. Second is innovation, and third is, I would say, going on Indrajit's point of data analytics, right? So, on leadership, I think what's very remarkable about cricket, or maybe for that matter any sports, is that on the field there is only one captain, right? There's one guy who takes a decision. Of course, in a huddle or in a meeting, you can give your opinion. Maybe on the field you can give an opinion, but it's a one person who takes the calls, right or wrong. And that's very important in the corporate world also, right? And many times this derails the whole corporate decision making. So that spirit of oneness and decision making. Innovation, I think, is again IPL is a great example of innovation. Whether it's just changing the pattern of your dress, inculcating more digitization in terms of cameras on the wickets,
Right.
And doing all those analytic, analysis and the graphics that you do. All that is basically for consumer engagement, right? Other consumer gets bored otherwise, right? If there's no change happening. So I think it's a question of constant engagement, constant innovation. I think that's, and the third one is, I think all of us would agree that while cricketers work on the ground, they also work back in their rooms, analyzing a lot of data, huge amount of data which has been collected over the years, right, in terms of in tomorrow's batting conditions, how has the teams performed, how have the ballers performed, how has the ball swung, etc., etc. Now this is very important, which we in the corporate world tend to overlook. Our managers are doers. They don't spend much of time analyzing. So I think these are the three things I would take away.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.